Good Erev Shabbos, Bayit family. Looking ahead to this Shabbat Parashat Vayishlach, our mix and match Shabbat with dozens of families connecting over a meal with those they might not yet know well from within our Bayit, furthering our mission of intergenerationality and connecting the beautiful diversity of our Bayit together. Looking forward to this special Shabbat. And it's a Shabbat when, as a Bayit, we think about what it means to be a member of the family of the Jewish people, of Am Yisrael. For we get our name Yisrael from our progenitor, our patriarch Yaakov Yisrael in this week's parasha. What does his name mean? Many commentaries point out that Yaakov gets his name Yisrael twice. First in his wrestling with the Ish on that fateful night before his encounter with Esav. And there, when he asks the Ish to send him free, when the Ish asks him to send him free, for day has broken, Yaakov says, Lo ashalecha chakim berachtani, I won't send you free until you bless me, asking for a blessing from that Ish. And the Ish asks him his name, and he says, Yaakov, and the Ish says to him, Lo Yaakov yeyamer od shimcha ki im Yisrael. Your name will no longer be called Yaakov, but rather Yisrael. Ki sarita im Elohim v'im anashim v'tuchal. Because you've wrestled with God and man and prevailed. The Yaakov who was a heel grabber, who was inferior and always lagging behind, now shows superiority, strength, and victory. A successful wrestler, Yisrael. Rav Amiel and many others, Rav Bazak too, who we studied in Parsha class this week, point out that this is only the first of the two instances in which Yaakov gets his name Yisrael. And there are some strange parts about this name. First of all, it's a name in which Yaakov is being told something, an identity that comes from the past. He's being told that he's going to be called Yisrael for a past activity, wrestling and being victorious. What about this is aspirational, is future-oriented? What about it is deeply thematic of his personality? Yes, it memorializes a moment of victory and success and prevailing and wrestling, something the Jewish people will have to do many, many more times. But is it a deepest vision of who he is? When he gets his name a second time, later in the parasha, when we're told that God says to him, Shimcha Yaakov, your name is Yaakov. Lo yikarei shimcha od Yaakov, ki im Yisrael yihiyeh shemecha, vayikrat shemo Yisrael. When God says to him, your name will no longer be called Yaakov, rather Yisrael will be your name, and God calls him Yisrael. Rav Amiel points out that God doesn't reference the name explanation that was given in the previous story. We're not told this time why Yaakov is called Yisrael. One possibility is that God is simply ratifying the name that the Ish gave him for the very same reason. But Rav Amiel suggests that that's not the case. Says something fascinating. In the first encounter, the encounter with the Ish is conceptualized by our sages as being Saro shel Esav, somehow the divine representation, the angelic figure, national representative of Esav. About Esav, we're told that he receives the blessing, V'al charbecha tichyeh, you will live by the sword. The lens of Esav's identity and personality is war. It's fighting. It's the sword. And so it's through that lens that he, the representative of Esav, the Ish, sees Yaakov and recognizes and applauds him for meeting Esav on Esav's own terms, for finally being a victor in battle, and describes that as his identity. Says Rav Amiel, God leaves out that explanation when giving Yisrael, Yaakov, his name Yisrael, because God says, that's just Esav's perspective on you. That's how Esav sees you. That's limiting. You're something more deep and without constraint. You are Yisrael. And what is the meaning of that name? Not that you wrestled with God and man and prevailed, but the Torah doesn't tell us. Rav Amiel suggests that this meaning is from Yashar El. You are the upright one of God. This is a much more deep and profound identity, one that's not limited to moments of struggle, but one which is about who we really are. People of uprightness, Vasita Hayashar V'Hatov, who are always striving to do the right thing. And, says Rav Amiel, people who have a directness of purpose. Yashar lelohim. We are direct in our vision, which is to grow deeper and more connected to God. It's an ethical mandate of perpetual and eternal uprightness, and it's a spiritual and religious mandate that even though our road may be windy and circuitous, it's always in our own minds, direct in its vision and its destination, which is to grow towards God always. I was thinking about the fact that maybe this is reflected, and Rav Amiel suggests in this direction too, the difference between the way the Ish tells Yaakov about Yaakov's name and the way God does. The Ish says, your name will not be called Yaakov anymore, but Yisrael. That's how you're going to be called. That's how people will know you. When God renames Yaakov Yisrael, God says, Lo yikarei shimcha od Yaakov, your name won't be called Yaakov anymore. Kim Yisrael yihiyeh shemecha. Yisrael, your name will be. It's much more core to your identity. It's not just what people name you, but it's who you embody. There have been and there will be many times of sarita, im Elohim v'im anashim, of the need to wrestle. But let ourselves not be limited by how Esav, a figure, a national identity of militarism, views us. Let us not see ourselves as fundamentally identified through our wrestling or fighting, even though we will and we must be victorious. Let us see ourselves as identified, our nationhood, through that much more fundamental, profound identity, Yashar El, the ones always striving for the most ethical uprightness, and whose spiritual and religious orientation, windy though the road may be, always has our eye on our final direct destination to go and grow towards God. Shabbat Shalom.